In this video, we are going to talk about how to build a medical device. Hi, I'm Vishnu Patikar. I'm a technology consultant at Delighteck. Let's get started. First thing you need to do is document all the requirements. These requirements could be electrical, mechanical, safety related, or functional. What is the problem your medical device is going to solve? What are the vital signs you need to collect? In case you already have a patent and you already have the set of requirements for your use case, in that case you can focus on proving the proof of concept. And please do not limit yourself to the scope of the patent, because there are more things needed to give seamless patient care. Once you have all the requirements documented, next important thing is to select the evaluation board. Now, what is an evaluation board? Evaluation board is a circuitry with a predefined components. Some of them, those components you will remove and install the new ones. Some of the components you will continue using it. These evaluation boards are generally sold by MCU companies like Nordic Semiconductors, ST Microelectronics, or even Infineon. Generally, it is better to choose an evaluation board in which majority of the components you require for your medical device are already included. In case you do not have these components included, you can buy these separately and loosely connect to the evaluation board for your proof of concept. Good. Now you have all the components required. You have chosen the evaluation board. Next thing to do is to build a proof of concept. What does it mean? Now you connect all the required components together, and you need to build a firmware, write a firmware, and then put it onto that particular evaluation board. Now, what is a firmware? It is a logical components, or we can call it as it is a software program written in generally in C programming language. And yes, you do not need a PCB design, you do not need the whole mechanical enclosure and all. It requires a lot of time and it requires a lot of iteration to go through. It is better to do the firmware programming on the evaluation board, and in my experience it is possible to do at least 60% of your firmware on the evaluation board itself. Now you have the version 1 of the firmware ready. Now you need to test and analyze the results, and in case there are changes needed, it is very easy to add and remove components, buy new components, throw away the existing component, and iterate until you find the final design for your medical device. Once you are confident about your proof of concept, you can start creating schematic. Now, what is a schematic? Schematic is a symbolic representation of your circuit, and it is the foundation of your PCB design. Now, once you have schematic ready, you can start designing your PCB layout. Next thing to do is the PCB design and the enclosure design. You can use the PCB design softwares like Altium Designer to lay out the components on the board and place the components such a way that signal traces are as small as possible. You also need to consider the EMI and EMC issues during the layout process, and specifically pay attention if you have multiple RF components on the board. Also consider board size, number of layers, routing of traces, and positioning of all the components on the board. For mechanical enclosure design, you can use the ready-made enclosures, or you can consult the enclosure design partners for your enclosure design. After your design is finalized, you can send these design files like Gerber files and all to your fabrication house. They will use these design files to create the PCB, and once the PCB is fabricated, they will send it for the assembly. For assembly, you need to solder all the components onto the PCB itself. You do not need to do it yourself. Get help from the experts, and do not order more than 10 PCBs at a time, at least for the first iteration, because this overconfidence will cost us more time and more money. Once your PCB is assembled, it is time to test this PCB. You need to make sure all the components soldered on the board are working fine. You can use signal test, you can use multiple voltage level tests, and you apply the voltage to the board and make sure it is working fine. You can also use the diagnostic test as part of your firmware to test each and every component independently, and also you can include this OBDS as part of your production firmware, but make sure firmware enters this mode only if a human being triggers it manually and it is secure enough. Next thing you need to understand is this is a iterative process. Nobody builds a perfect PCB on the first try. It will take 2 to 3 iterations at least, and do not look for perfection. It's a part of process. It's painful, yes, it is painful, but we call it as no pain no gain, and this is one of the reason that there are not many medical devices available in the market, because this whole process of building this medical device is painful. The last thing to do is certification and compliance. I would say more than a compliance and the regulatory bodies, it is our moral responsibility to make sure at least the patient health is not compromised because of our medical device. There might be different risks involved, especially with the battery powered devices, because when you are charging, people might use it and it is dangerous because these batteries are lithium ion batteries, and you know the incidents happened, and there are incidents where the FDA has asked the manufacturer to recall the devices. It is important to remember that there are different regulatory bodies in different countries, and one of the reasons for this could be the environment of different countries is different. For example, the lithium ion battery might behave differently in a cold countries and might behave differently in a tropical countries, or even high temperature countries. Now you get to know how to build a medical device, and the interesting thing is this is the same procedure for building any IoT device. The only difference is medical devices have higher regulatory compliance requirements. I sincerely hope this video will inspire you to build a medical device and build more and more medical devices, and it will help us to bring equality in healthcare, and it will help us to everybody gets access to healthcare. Beyond this, I would like to continue our conversation about medical devices. Please join Next Generation Medical Devices community. The link is in the comment, and this is where you will get access to past and future resources related to building a medical device. See you soon.